Hi, Zarin Wilson. We're discussing free agency, particularly the wide receiver position, and a lot of activity on Sunday. I want to get through some of the things that were true and some things that were false about the Texans in terms of the wide receiver market, which they've already entered by trading for Christian Kirk. And the anticipation is that they will do a adjusted contract for Christian Kirk, get him under contract for more years, and lower his salary cap figure. Right now, he has a $15.5 million base salary and $16.5 million in total compensation. So they want to get that number down. But the big moves: 2 years, $46 million. Davante Adams joins the Los Angeles Rams, and he wanted to stay on the West Coast. The Texans were not a player in the Adams market. And thing that's worth remembering, I'm going to mention this again when we talk about DK Metcalf, traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers for a second-round draft pick, and he's going to sign a 5-year, $150 million deal. The Texans do not have the financial ability to sign those players without significantly mortgaging the future. And lest we forget, Nico Collins is a Pro Bowl wide receiver, a legitimate number one wide receiver, that they have a great number, maybe even a little bit of a bargain, at 3 years and $75 million. And they've, of course, restructured that deal to create nearly $10 million in cap space, $9.8 million approximately. So, yeah, the Texans, they weren't in on the DK Metcalf deal. DK Metcalf, in terms of wanting to play in warm weather, all those things, I'm told that's untrue. And it's a moot point anyway. He's a Pittsburgh Steeler. So, yeah, the Texans were not in on those markets, and those players joined new teams and outstanding players, great wide receivers, but so is Nico Collins. And they have Christian Kirk. They can draft a wide receiver. They can look at the free agent market at less expensive options to continue to bolster the position, like Demarcus Robinson, Diami Brown comes to mind. I don't know if they would even spend as much as for a Josh Palmer, who's going to have a good market, from the Chargers. And overall, receiver, it's been addressed a little bit, and they'll keep trying to add to the position, but I don't see the need to have someone else that is comparable to a number one wide receiver, and that's what Nico Collins is at 6'4", 222, 4.44 speed, great body control, outstanding catches. I know there tends to be sort of a recency bias in the NFL, but you have to really look at these things and say, well, does that make sense? Is that something they need to be doing? And so, yeah, I always try to apply some logic to these matters and just look at, what makes sense for the Texans and what should they ultimately do when you're talking about players they should be involved in and all those things. So, yeah, it's just my 2 cents on it, and, I don't react to every single thing. It's just like Deebo Samuel, as we've said. The Texans weren't in this Deebo Samuel thing, and a lot of times teams' names are thrown around. And why? It's to try to drive up the price. It's to try to get people interested in, having a market. And that's why you do these things. So you look at, all these moves, and they make sense, right? And that's, typically why, there's a link to someone, they mention somebody, and it's that time of year. It's rumor season, and rumors run rampant, and that's fine. I like to deal in facts. I like to deal in information that I feel good about, and if I have something to report, then I'll report it. If I don't have it, I don't know is a really honest answer, and sometimes you can just say, I don't know, or I think this. I'm not reporting that. So what I've got here, I've got the Texans free agent list. I want to update you on some negotiations that they're involved in and kind of try to forecast a little bit what may happen in the next couple of days. Don't have a crystal ball. There'll be lots of twists and turns, and it'll depend on what these players' prices are. Now we're on the eve of the legal tampering period as I speak Sunday night here. So I'm just going to go down through the Texans' list of free agents and try to forecast a little bit about what's going to happen. Stephon Diggs, their number one free agent, one of the top free agents available, still coming off torn ACL, a possession-style receiver, slot receiver, just like Christian Kirk. And my expectation is that Stephon will head to free agency. And heard about the Dallas Cowboys being a potential link, of course, with his brother, Trevon Diggs, being up there. We'll see. The Washington Commanders look like they're pretty good at wide receiver now. Don't know if that's going to be a link to play for his hometown Commanders. That was the team his mom wanted, but we'll see. I'm sure there'll be a good market for Stephon Diggs. Robert Woods, wide receiver. Door not closed on Woods. Potentially could be back as a depth piece. Great locker room leader. Recently spoke with Robert at a upper deck golf event at Dyken Park, and we had a good conversation about it. He'd love to come back. With everything, it comes back to price, and he is 32, but he's a good leader, good blocker, and a good special teams player. Wouldn't shock me if he was back. As I reported before, Foley Fatukasi, defensive tackle, needs shoulder surgery that will delay his market, will not be available at the start of free agency, and the Texans will probably have to move on from Foley with adding other players to the defensive tackle position. Good run stuffer, and I could see him doing well once he's fully healthy, having had the surgery, and he's expected back healthy by training camp. Jeff Okudah, reserve corner, had lots of injuries. The Texans do like Jeff, and he's interested in coming back. I do think he'll have some market for his services, so we'll see what happens with Jeff. No lock to come back. Case Keenum, venerable backup quarterback. Right now, no action toward returning. Don't know Case's plans. Not sure if that's something that will happen or not. MJ Stewart, safety and special teamer. Fairly expensive safety and special teamer, and a good one. No deal at this point, and don't know yet if anything will develop with the Texans. Would expect him to get a job, of course. And then Delshon Phillips, door not closed on him, but I think a lot of these linebackers that are special teamers, not in that first wave of free agency, but there's some interest, some mutual interest in him coming back. Doesn't mean it necessarily will. And then Neville Hewitt, a real thumper, would love to have a starting job somewhere else. I think he'll explore free agency before possibly going back to the Texans. So we'll see what happens with Neville, and if he was to head to free agency, I could see some teams looking at him as an inexpensive starter. He did play very well last year, moves well, big hitter, better in pass coverage than some people have estimated that he would be, but he's a guy that covers some ground, and high character guy, tough guy, and he's been here for years, and he'll continue his career. I thought he did some really nice things when Azeez Al-Shaair was out of the lineup. I know pass coverage is not necessarily the strongest suit of his game, but what a thumper on special teams and on first and second downs as a run stuffer. So like some of the things that he does. Derek Barnett, great third defensive end, not a starter, not a great pass rusher. Had a couple of fumble returns for touchdowns for the Texans. Looked like a running back out there. And Barnett is a player that I believe that they have a contract offer out on, and they would consider bringing back. He's going to look around for the next few days. Doesn't necessarily have to make a fast decision, but wouldn't shock me if Barnett ultimately comes back into the fold. But like with everything with free agency, fluid process. And then Eric Murray. Eric has some interest in returning. The Texans have some interest in him. I think that they will, continue to explore that, and Eric will, know his market a lot more in the next few days. So we'll see if something happens with him. While I'm talking about safety, I've heard some rumors about some interest in Andre Cisco, possibly on a short-term deal, and that Cisco would have some interest in the Texans. So we'll see. Obviously, everything is price dependent when it comes to free agency, but some interest there in Andre Cisco. So not reporting that they'll definitely get Andre Cisco for anybody that's aggregating. I would just say that that's something to keep an eye on is Andre Cisco. Chris Boyd, door not closed on Chris Boyd. We've talked about him before. It's not something where Chris is banned from the team or anything like that because of the Chiefs game, a little bit of a meltdown, throwing his helmet, and then an exuberant, boisterous shove of Frank Ross, special teams coordinator. No hard feelings on either side about that, and obviously it looked different than it really was in terms of why did he push him. It's more of like a LFG kind of moment, not like he had anything against Frank. He loves Frank, and they have a lot of appreciation for what he did on punts and kickoffs. So we'll see what happens with Chris. But there's lots of special teamers, and we'll see if Chris is one of the special teamers they bring back. Mario Edwards Jr., defensive tackle, good inside player, good at shooting gaps, gets a lot of penetration into the backfield, and pass rushers like Mario seem to do well in free agency, and I think that he'll head to free agency, explore it fully, and have some good offers. So we'll see what happens with Mario Edwards Jr. at this point. No movement to bring him back. Dargo Moale, of course, is off the list. 1 year, $2 million to bring back a key special teamer, emergency kicker, and a good third down back. Like him better as a pass catcher than a inside runner on red zone, but just does some nice things. Real glue guy, someone that you want on your team. John Weeks, a lot of questions about John Weeks. John Weeks is a free agent again. He's interested in coming back. The Texans have made no overtures toward bringing him back, and they did sign Tucker Addington to a reserve future deal. I'm expecting some sort of competitive situation with another long snapper, and for right now, no movement toward a John Weeks deal. Doesn't mean that it might not happen, but this is a different pattern the Texans are following when it comes to John Weeks. Where in the past, we would have known that John Weeks is going to be back on the roster. Who knows? Maybe they're waiting to the last minute. Maybe they're waiting to have all their salary cap adjustments in a row before they move or communicate what they're doing with long snapper. But it'll be more than Tucker Addington. One way or another, there will be competition at the long snapper position. And I can report per sources that the Texans are exploring the college long snapper market. So they'll be looking at some of these college long snappers too. So we'll see how they go forward. Jerry Hughes, older free agent, 35 years old, Sugar Land native. And this might be where the rubber meets the road for Jerry. Just didn't play a lot. They didn't use him very much. And my expectation is that one way or another they move on, or maybe Jerry retires. We'll see. He's in great shape. He's always ready, but don't know if he'll be back. Would say probably unlikely at this point. Kendrick Green, I expect to leave in free agency. Some player that filled in for them, had his moments at times when he was filling in, and other times they had a tough game, like the Jets game when he started. And I would think that Kendrick will get some love from some other teams and would expect him to sign elsewhere in free agency. Nothing imminent on Irv Smith, who did a good job blocking, especially in the Titans game. And I could see Irv possibly being back. Just will depend on how much does it cost. But they could use him for depth. He's a good blocker. But they are looking to get younger at tight end. I've heard that from several sources. Wouldn't shock me if they drafted a tight end. And then, with Miles Bryant, did a decent job at nickel, filled in for them. I thought played well at times. Good special teamer. Former Patriot, and this isn't something that happens in the first wave of free agency. So if they were to do something with Miles, don't know that has to happen right now. And I think he'll have some market. Devin White, his playing time basically absolutely went to zero late in the season. Don't expect him back, and don't know if this is necessarily a fit, Devin White and the Texans, but they were looking for somebody. They gave it a shot. And I don't necessarily think that Devin will be back. So a couple more free agents to go over. Kadar Holman is coming off of a torn ACL, terrible knee injury, had given them some good play as a backup corner, able to step in a pinch and start if he needed to. And so Kadar is not healthy enough right now. He needed to pass a physical before someone could sign him to a contract. Tegan Kuatoriano will not be tendered as a restricted free agent. Not a shock. Tegan, a lot of durability issues. Not in terms of the door completely closed on Tegan returning, but less likely that it happens than comes back. Zachary Thomas, we're going to call him Zach. It's going to be too formal there. Offensive tackle and guard, and they have had talks going back and forth about having Zach back. So we'll see if Zach signs a deal like Kurt Heinisch for lower than the right of first refusal tender, which is over $3 million. So they look for a number closer to like Heinisch, which was 1 year, $2.35 million, with that's the max value, and a base value of $1.8 million. Dalton Keene, also coming off of a torn ACL, someone that I think would be ready by April or May. So no deal at this time. Another restricted free agent that they will not tender, and so he'll head to free agency, but not healthy enough to join a team just right now. Aforementioned Heinisch, and then closing this out, Jake Hansen, linebacker. Mutual interest in having him return. I expect it to happen, but no deal just yet. Still plenty of time. And even if he did get non-tendered and head to free agency, it's not necessarily he'd be snapped up and signed with another team. I'm sure they would continue to have dialogue, conversation about whether he could come back, and then they look at, do they still have money? Have they filled the spot? And I could see scenarios where both Jake Hansen and W. Wood are back on the team, just like last year. So let's move on to some slightly more exciting things that you guys are probably more interested in than the Texans' own free agents. I get a lot of questions about the guard spot. So, trying to figure it out a little bit before they start the legal tampering period, which is when I think that Nick Caserio will start to engage with, some of the agents that represent these free agent guards. Trey Smith has already signed his franchise tender, so he's all set for the Chiefs, and I'm sure they'll work on a long-term deal. So he's not available. It's a non-exclusive franchise tag, but the Texans aren't going to be able to afford Trey Smith, not with the cap space they have currently. Will Fries is regarded by most as the top guard, graded out very highly before he broke his tibia in Week 5 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I see Will Fries being someone that the Texans just can't afford. I think he's going to have a strong market. Don't see that happening with the Texans. Moving down to the next guy. Tevin Jenkins, Chicago Bears, has played tackle, has played guard, has a nasty temperament, and he finishes his blocks. Tough guy, would add some power. I think he's going to do very well in free agency. Don't know necessarily if they can afford him. I think it's the same deal with James Daniels, who plays with power. I've heard sources they're going to go to more of a power scheme, which I think suits the personnel they have on the roster better than this finesse zone fan-out blocking style that was used with Chris Strausser and Bobby Slowick. So those who like the offensive line, that is a change. A lineman I like for them, I don't know, not reporting that necessarily they'll do this, but I think he would make sense, and that maybe they can afford. Kevin Zeitler. He's in his mid-30s. He's tough, technically sound. He can get to the second level. He's been a winning football player for the Baltimore Ravens and the Detroit Lions, and his Pro Football Focus grade was an 87.2 career high, so he's 34. And I could see him being someone that if you can get him in at about $6-7 million, that would make some sense. I haven't heard about them having an interest in Mekhi Becton, but Mekhi has some, definite interest in the market. Another player that kind of falls into the Zeitler category, tough, and it fits the style that they want to have, is Brandon Scherf from the Jaguars. And I know he had that fight with Azeez Al-Shaair. I'm sure they could shake hands and mend fences. They were both just doing their thing for their team. So I could see Scherf being in play. Another lineman I like for them, he's versatile, he's played tackle, and he's a good athlete, is Patrick McCarry from the Ravens. Ravens have a nice downhill run blocking scheme. They're also good at pulling at those wham blocks that the Texans had a lot of trouble with. That's someone I think also fits into the category of a potential Texan. See if that happens. Aaron Banks from the Niners, finesse style lineman, very good athlete, former second-round pick, going to make a lot of money. Don't see him as being a fit. There are some linemen from the Arizona Cardinals I kind of like for the Texans that might be cheaper, like Will Hernandez. They've never showed an interest in Dalton Risers with the Vikings. Don't see them being a link with Matt Pryor. Laken Tomlinson, never seen them have any interest in Laken Tomlinson. Evan Brown, there's been a little bit of talk before about Evan Brown coming from the Cardinals, and I haven't heard anything on Tristan Colon. So those are some of the guys. And so I know a lot of people want to know about defensive tackle. So D-tackle, if Mario Edwards is gone, Aaron, and they're not bringing back Foley Fatukasi, well, what are they going to do? Okay. Well, Sheldon Rankins, if they can agree on price, that's still a possibility. And so we'll see. I think he is more in like the 8 million to 10 million range. We'll see if the Texans are willing to come up to that level to consummate a deal. So that's a possibility to fill that spot. Also could be done via the draft, which not everything is going to get done in free agency. They don't have that kind of cap space. They can still create some more. I've had a few people ask me about Danielle Hunter. With Danielle, he's definitely underpaid now with the way the edge market is going. Not he should get Myles Garrett, $40 million quarterback money, or be paid as much as Max Crosby in the 30 million, and plus category. But you can make the argument at 25 he's a little underpaid, and maybe he should be closer to 30 million. So we'll see what happens with Danielle Hunter, and they could certainly clear up some cap space. But a simple restructure, I don't see that in the cards. I think actually a real extension with real money. And he certainly seems to be in the prime of his career, and he's been a great fit and playing for his hometown team. I've heard of Puur Ford. The Chargers are going to do pretty well in free agency. You're seeing a lot of guys get off the market, including Jaron Reed, going back with the Seahawks for solid money. And there'll still be a lot of free agents out there like B.J. Hill and D.J. Jones. Tershawn Wharton is going to do really well in free agency from the Chiefs. Do not anticipate him back. Being in play for the Texans. I could see maybe a DJ Jones or a Sebastian Joseph Day, all price dependent, if the Texans could get involved with guys like that. Adam Butler, of course, went back to the Raiders. So a lot of guys are going to come off the board in the next couple of days. The free agent list will be further thinned, and there are going to be some agreements that are going to happen Monday, Tuesday, and also Wednesday before free agency officially begins, Wednesday afternoon at 3 p.m. Central. And so we'll have coverage for you with all these things. Usually can't do a video immediately because I have writing and reporting responsibilities for KPRC2 and www.click2houston.com, but do my best to give you the latest information and try to synthesize it and give some context to what happens or doesn't happen in regards to the Texans. So appreciate you guys. If you're tuning into this channel for the first time, please like and subscribe. And this channel's for you guys. I'm trying to be a little more interactive now with you, the fans, and NFL fans in general. So look for more content here on my YouTube channel. And of course, I'm on X/Twitter at AaronWilson_NFL, Instagram, AaronWilson7128. And you can always read about it on www.click2houston.com. So I look forward to our next conversation. Thanks for tuning in.